All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is the Irritate State podcast. It's been a few weeks since we've done a podcast. Actually, the last time we did a podcast was we were speaking with one of my guests tonight. Have Jason, for those who are frequent listeners, to livefree.fm with Paranoid, which is actually on Saturday night tonight, which is the 14th of January. Then you may have heard one of my guests, Jason, on there last week, and he is very well-versed and knowledgeable on UCC, and we're going to talk about that because my other guest, Angela Smith, you can check her story out over at irritatestate.net. She has a really heartbreaking story, and we're gonna go over. I thought maybe that Jason could take and maybe enlighten Angela a little bit on this particular ordeal, the UCC. So first, I want to say hello, Jason. Jason, why don't you let us know, exactly, a little bit about, some background. I heard that you have used certain things that you have researched, because you've been researching this for 8-9 years now, and studying it, and you've actually practiced what you've researched and used it in a court of law. So why don't you give us a brief little background, Jason?
Sure. And first of all, I want to say thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Anytime I can get a forum to express the values of freedom, I'm definitely thankful and grateful for that. So my story begins probably 20 years ago, at a time when I was, oblivious. I was completely ignorant of how the system works, and through that ignorance, I made some poor choices and found myself, in quite a few jams with the system. That said, I have a record. I have not always been successful. I've learned through trial and error, and I subscribe to that ideology. I think that you have to get your feet wet before you can learn how to swim. You have to get involved. Where I'm coming from basically is from a legal researcher perspective. My rights were being violated so often once I had earned a name for myself that it was either, sink or swim. I had to learn how to apply what they were applying against me. And so that was where, the basis of where I'm coming from started, was just in my own personal defense. And that is where I've primarily stayed. I have never really represented anyone else. I've applied what I know in my case for myself. And some things have worked and some have not. What I had hoped to accomplish with UCC was initially, my introduction to it was the whole redemption methodology or technology, if you will. And I had to spend a lot of time on that to just grasp what was going on. And there are still moments where I have to go back to the books and reread things I've already read, because it's one big convoluted mess. And even after 8 or 9 years of studying it, it's definitely a huge mountain to try to climb as far as understanding and knowledge lies.
Right.
My whole battle came from not wanting to be a part of the system. I didn't understand that, it didn't matter what I wanted. The system had expectations of me, and they were going to force those expectations upon me. And so I had to learn how to utilize every aspect of what they were utilizing, which goes from the common law into the statutes and then into the commercial aspects of the whole process. And so the UCC was something that you have to learn, but there are certain pitfalls and traps set up, I think, at least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's set up so that people are deterred from actually trying to apply any of the knowledge that they're offering.
Right.
There's so much disinformation. That's the problem with the way people understand UCC. So that's a little where I'm coming from, I guess.
So it can definitely be a trap, as you said, if you don't have the correct background, the correct research and time put into understanding it. Absolutely, Angela. I want to welcome you again. How have you been, first off?
Hello. We've had a couple of weeks. Hi. We had the government walkthrough. During that time, the prosecuting attorneys, along with the FBI agent, IRS agent, and a plethora of lackeys, for lack of a better word, came to our home. They ordered my dad off of his property, and they drove all in his yard, tore up his landscape timbers, ruined a drain. They did a lot of intentional damage. His driveway is approximately 22 feet wide. You can easily pass 2 cars, but they felt the need to destroy his yard. He filed a police report, and now they're trying to have his bond revoked, claiming that he filed a false report. However, the pictures, attorneys have seen them, a couple of reporters. It's definitely intentional. So we're dealing with that at this point.
Okay, so why don't you for those who are listening to, or are going to be listening to this podcast and maybe didn't know that we had talked to you before, Angela, why don't you give a brief overview, and probably for Jason's benefit as well, about what happened. And for those who want more detail, they can refer back to the first time that we spoke. And that episode is actually on YouTube as well as over at irritatethestate.net. So why don't you give us a brief overview of how this all transpired, what happened?
Okay, approximately February 23rd of 2010, we were awakened, or we weren't at home. We received a phone call from my father to come home that the FBI, IRS, and the CFTC were raiding our home. My husband and I came home. He dropped me off at my father's, and he came down and he spoke to them. My husband had filed his UCC redemption documents and was asking them to show that him proof that they had a reason to be on this property, or the little spiel that they say. They took a lot of things from our home, weren't on a search warrant, as well as the things they had permission to take. They then arrested him on, I believe it was March 10th or 11th, 2010, on a criminal complaint. He was held for months, diesel therapy, sent all over the country, and before they ever had any kind of indictment or formal charges, it took them 8 grand juries to actually charge him with anything. December of 2010, I was arrested. My husband ran an investment club with a partner, and they had asked me to be the authorized signer, which I agreed to do. He handled all the funds that came in and out of the account. All I had to do was sign checks, and he handled all the deposits, and et cetera. They claim that he ran a Ponzi scheme, him and his partner, and that they ended up convicting me of 232 counts of conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering. My father was a member of their investment club. He invested his whole life savings. They spent my whole trial convicting me, using him, saying he was the biggest victim. They later ended up charging him with 2 counts of perjury. He does have the beginning stages of dementia, and now they're trying to charge him with conspiracy after the fact, and they want to take his home. He owns the 84 acres, the 2 houses that are here, all the mineral rights, mining rights, timber rights, etc. They want it all.
Yeah, when we first spoke, my first thought was it sounds like a land grab. What do you think so far, Jason? Do you have anything you want to mention?
Well, assets are certainly part of the picture. I mean, that everything that's involved. Although I, in my mind, they're out to make an example out of people who are espousing some of the methods people are utilizing the UCC, and it sounds to me like, I mean, this is gross in my mind. I guess my question for you, Angela, is have you filed any kind of counterclaim against any of the people who are bringing charges against you for any of these trespasses upon your rights and your family's rights? I mean, for me, my understanding is you never want to walk into that courtroom as a defendant. You want to be there as a plaintiff, which means you have to offer a different set of facts, or the facts as you've enumerated even here tonight, on the record, so that there is, a counterclaim, that you become a plaintiff at that point. You're not working from a defensive position. You also have an offensive position that you can work from.
We haven't. My husband did try to file, and I'm sorry that I can't be of more help with this. I was a homemaker. He handled all of our finances, everything for me. I'm very limited on, I didn't even get discovery in my own trial. So I'm very limited with what I have to work with, and I'm not sure of all the facts. I mean, most of it is just kind of secondhand that I'm guessing at. Do you know he filed his redemption papers? He actually hired somebody and paid a lot of money to someone to help him file those. And he copyrighted it. He did
that's
copyright
the whole
his
idea
name.
behind that.
Go ahead.
And he also when he was before he was arrested, he wanted proof from, I believe it was the CFTC, where he had ever done business with them, because initially the CFTC filed a civil suit, which then gave the FBI and the IRS, et cetera, free reign into our lives, but it was done through a civil suit. He was deposed, not under oath. He refused to be sworn in, and he repeatedly gave that statement, I will answer your questions on bona fide proof that you have the authority to ask me these questions, or something to that extent. And they went off the record and told him if he didn't answer their questions that they would refuse to allow him to testify at his own trial or any proceedings. So when they went back on the record, he would just give whatever answer first popped into his head, thinking that he wasn't sworn in, so he wasn't under any obligation to be telling the truth.
Right, to talk to him anyway, yeah.
They are trying to say that I participated in the UCC. They've tried that over and over. I really don't know anything about it. I have his packet of paperwork, but
was anything filed in your name?
I'm property from my gist of this paperwork. He filed that me and our children were his property. But no, nothing in my name. I've never filed anything.
Well, if your signature isn't on any documents, then it's fairly easy to establish that you aren't a party to any of those contracts that the UCC agreements that he created. You know, I mean, he is the signing party. You know what I mean? You're just named. I mean, it names you, but you have a right to argue that you are not party to that contract, even though you were named by it, because that's a document that he has put forward. So, I mean, even before you get to that type of a defense, there are so many other things that you should be doing as far as bringing charges against the people who are abrogating your rights. It sounds to me like this is a steamroller job. It sounds like they're just setting you up. I mean, everything. I listened to some of the podcast, the previous podcast you've done, and just what you said tonight. I mean, it sounds to me like these people had it out for your husband, and they were going to make an example out of him. But that's, you know, if he is behaving in a certain way, that's not your responsibility, and they have to prove the case against you. I mean, if your signature isn't on any of those contracts, and if nothing establishes that you were a party to any of that, other than being named by some of the agreements your husband put forward, I don't see where they have a case against you or your father unless he was signing documents. But even then, there are some defenses more through the common law than you're going to find through UCC that are going to prevent anything that they're trying to bring forward. I mean, it just sounds to me like they've committed crimes. They've violated your rights to get some of this information, and then they're using this information obtained illegally against you. And you have to go back to the very beginning, because everything that's happened from the start of it and that they've done wrong is null and void once you go back to the very start and establish where they went off the beaten path and decided to become tyrants versus being lawful peace officers and abiding by the Constitution and abiding and obeying and respecting your rights.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. We from the get-go, the very first time I went in to seek an attorney for my husband and for myself, because at that point he had been arrested and it was up to me to find him legal counsel. That's the first thing I said. They obtained a lot of property that was not given permission. Nobody wanted, you have time for that. Like, nobody ever filed an illegal search warrant, ever. And I've been saying that from the beginning. They took all kinds of property that they didn't have authority to take off of that search warrant. Every time I bring that up, they question my sanity. Are you drinking the cuckoo juice too? When I brought up what was done to my children and myself, I'm told I don't want to make waves. I can't talk to anybody. Don't speak about this. You're just going to make it tougher on yourself. Force a plea. You just don't know where to go to. When the attorneys don't work, I'm seeing that my husband was shipped all over the country, put in really, really ridiculous situations for his belief system. I'm fearful. I'm fearful to go that route. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very scary situation, being in your shoes. And Donna, she knows it as well. There were some issues that happened with her husband where he was being threatened by prison CEOs, and we got word of it, and we called the local sheriff's department, and we made a big stink about it on the air, and they threw him in the hole for 3 months, and we didn't find out until after that he was let out of the hole, or the shoe as they call it. Until we found out, and after he was let out of the hole is when we found out that this is what it was. So your feelings are accurate, Angela. It is a very scary situation to take and pursue it, but I think that it goes without saying, because they will run over you, they will steamroll you, your husband, your father. If a stand isn't taken, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Jason, because as you heard Angela say, when she would question these things to whatever agency or authority she was speaking to, on a couple of occasions, I believe she said, there were comments like, are you drinking the crazy juice or cuckoo juice, leading to the insinuating she's some kind of conspiracy theorist. Putting her in that bubble. What do you think about that? Because it really goes with what you were saying, Jason, that this almost seems like a targeting job, that they're making an example, and for them to bring up these little comments like that in an interview, interrogation setting, or whatever you want to say it was, it seems that they're already leaning to that to try and discredit Angela, discredit all those involved who are suffering.
Right. Kurt, I mean, that's spot on. I guess in my mind, my thoughts on it are that you have to go back to the beginning of the redemption movement and understand that the whole idea is not a matter of law, really. It's a theory. And it's all circumstantial. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that suggests what a lot of the assertions that are put forward by the redemption movement are. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that would suggest that they are right, but there may be evidence that we're not privy to that demonstrates otherwise. And if you go back to the beginnings, really, of the redemption movement, to people like Roger Elvik, I think, or Sam Davis, or Winston Schroe. I think it all stems from Roger Elvik, and these were all theories using the law, but not in a way that had been seen before by the courts. And so what you're getting as a response from these people is the idea that this has no foundation or no applicability in the venue that they're trying to use it in. So to them, it's almost like a cult or religion, because there's really no way to prove some of these theories that have been put forward by some of these quote-unquote gurus,
right?
That teach some of these less than honest systems.
And that's a great point to bring up, because I wanna mention this for those listening, that and I believe that Paranoid hit on this last week on a show that you were a part of. I believe it was last week that he mentioned that you can listen to a lot of people give their insights, their experiences when it comes to the legal system, but by all means do your own research. Don't put all your eggs in somebody else's basket and rely on their methods, regardless of what they say. It is very important to take and do your own research, and like I said, Paranoid hit on that last week. Why don't for those and maybe Angela as well, Jason, why don't you is in as simple and layman terms as you possibly can, for those who are not well versed in this area, can you explain exactly what this UCC is and what that means?
Sure. Basically, it's a series of documents that you submit to put up with the county clerk to create a record. And the whole idea is that until you profess the jurisdiction that you live within, they get to presume what jurisdiction applies to you. So the idea here is that UCC can be used, these documents, it's a UCC-1 financing statement, which is basically a lien. And what redemption espouses is that me, the living person, the man, has a quote-unquote straw man. I use that term kind of loosely. I'm not a fan of that term. I used to be, but having done research, there are reasons why I'm not a fan of that term. It's basically where they submit a claim. They separate the two entities, the fiction or the straw man and the living man, as two different entities. And they submit a UCC as the living man, as a lien, a superior lien upon all of the property owned by the debtor, which is the straw man or the name. And the living man would become the creditor then. And it becomes a situation where the living man becomes a secured party for the straw man or the governmental entity created by the HJR 192 in 1933, where they rounded up all the gold. And this is the idea that there is a trust or some kind of account that can be accessed by the living man through the transmitting utility or the straw man, to be able to set off any kind of charges, like it's a credit card to some effect. And what they do is they file a UCC-1, which lists who they are and separates the two entities. And then they file addendums or UCC-3s listing all their property, which applies to the trust that they're claiming as the living man. And so basically what happens then is, in theory, the government has to pay off any loan, or any lien that you placed on the account or the straw man before they can apply any type of lien of their own or any type of judgment against you. And so it's done in a defensive manner, although there are aspects of it where people began doing accepted for value and drafting negotiable instruments. And this is where people started going all wrong. I think, in my mind and my understanding, it's there for defensive purposes. It's there to protect your assets. But the minute you want to dip into the candy jar, so to speak, that's when the hand gets slapped. So, the documents you're filing basically create a lien against your own property so that they have to pay off that lien, which then can be used to pay off any charges brought against you. And that's kind of how it goes in a nutshell.
Angela, do you have any questions or comments from that? I know you mentioned last time we talked that you really didn't understand a whole lot about it. Does that help in any way? Does any of it sound familiar?
It does. Actually, I know that the CFTC civil lawsuit that he received, he put accepted for value on each page and sent them back to them. He also did something with stamps, with a one-cent stamp. I don't know what that was about, and some red ink or something. I've heard that mentioned in court quite a bit. But as far as the assets are accepted for value, that's the only thing I've ever heard that mentioned on was the court documents.
Okay. Well, so basically, your advice, Jason, as far as a course of action would be to go into court, which you do have a court date coming up soon, don't you, Angela?
At this point, it's February 13th. I don't know, the court-appointed attorney, he doesn't ever answer my emails or, like I said, since October, I've been told I would get an opportunity to go. They're still holding my children's birth certificates. I keep being told that I'll get to go through those documents. That's yet to happen. So he told me they still haven't provided child transcripts to the court-appointed attorney because he's different than the attorney I had through trial.
Right.
So I have no idea what's going to happen. And also you mentioned, being more of a plaintiff, in the case, but, look at all the damage that they just did to my father's property when they ordered him not at home, and he filed a police report, and they're threatening to, put him back in jail, revoke his bond. I can't see. It's not like anybody was barricaded in that property. They weren't even up there. They were supposed to be down here, and they just. I know that they don't have the right to do whatever they want, but that's how it's going. They can do whatever they want.
Angela, they all have oaths of office, and an oath of office is more than just words people speak. I mean, there's a legal intent behind having an oath. I mean, there is an obligation created by that oath of office in a monetary sense. And these people depend on that monetary value of that oath in order to be in office. And if you don't scrutinize their oaths, and if you don't look at what financial instruments put them into office, they're not threatened in their official capacity at all. You're not applying any pressure upon anything that matters to them as far as establishing who they are and what they get to do and what they can't do. These people work for us first and foremost, and they need to understand that. Everything that I'm hearing from your case, to me, I feel like nobody's helped you. I feel like you've just been steamrolled, and now you just have this pile of charges to try to sort through. And where do you begin? It's like they're just throwing wave after wave of charges at you and those in your family. And at some point, you have to just stop and say, wait a minute, I don't have 8 arms and 5 brains to sort through everything you guys are trying to do. You have to go back to the beginning. When you get lost, go back to the beginning. So where did the initial series of events begin to occur? And you have to find the initial, the transgression upon your rights, and begin to dissect who's responsible for making the presumptions that they made to bring any of this into the court. I mean, by law, you said he was given, what do you call it, the diesel treatment?
Correct.
Yeah, well, he's supposed to have been taken in front of a magistrate within, so many hours of actually being detained. He has to, the arresting officer has to go state a case. He has to, take him in front of the judge. So, I mean, it sounds to me like there is gross violations that have occurred in this, and that somewhere we have to sit down and try to find you someone that can help you and your family, set forward your case in a defensive manner. I mean, there has to be someone there working in a pro bono fashion, or someone closer to where you're at that understands how the court process works, so that you can get the ball rolling on how to start holding these people accountable to their oaths. Because until you do that, they're going to continue to make presumptions, and they're going to continue to assert their rules and their codes and everything that they espouse upon you until you begin to rebut. Because until you begin to rebut those assertions, they stand in law. They stand as a fact. And so you can't be silent when they're bringing these charges against you. You have to actually create discussion. You have to begin talking with the courts about who's saying what and where are these charges coming from, and where are these people's oaths of office. You have to begin a dialogue with the courts through both discussion and discovery. There's a lot of things that have to happen before they can even bring the case against you. I mean, I guess it all comes back to understanding pretrial motions and all the proceedings that occur before you even go to trial. I mean, there should be jurisdictional arguments. There should be all kinds of defensive strategies that you should be putting forward to slow all of this down, because to me it sounds just like they're going to do whatever they're going to do because you're not asserting any of your rights. And that's the biggest issue is...
I'm not even sure at this point what my rights are. I was always thought that when you were put under arrest, you were supposed to be read your rights. That never happened for anybody, not myself, not my husband, not my father. I was always told they couldn't use brute force if you weren't resisting. They body slammed my husband, cut his arms all up. He didn't resist them. He opened the door and walked out willingly. I was touched by a man after a woman searched me. All of these things, but I go to the attorney that's supposed to be representing me, and then they blow it off, and they don't do anything about it. And so I'm at a loss at what I'm supposed to. When I do speak to the judge, she calls me simple-minded, or tells me I don't know what goes into a court proceeding. What do you mean I don't know? I was just rolled through it. I think I know better than anybody what happens in the courtroom.
Yeah, and
we need to get you a series of questions that you can ask the court. And questions are always the best route to go as far as dialogue, because when you're asking questions, you remain in honor. You're not making any assertion. You're not putting anything into law that isn't true. When you're asking a question, basically they have to make certain assumptions and presumptions based on your question, and they have to answer you because it's their duty to ensure a fair trial. And some of the techniques that I've listened to and I have yet to try myself, so I probably shouldn't even speak on it, but it comes from people who have done it, and I've seen evidence, is just to ask the courts who they represent. The lawyer, the judge, and the prosecutor are all officers of the court, and they're all bar members. How are you supposed to get a fair deal when they're all representing, the same team? Basically, you're the only one in that courtroom who doesn't have an obligation to some entity or society, and they're all in there for the same reason as officers of the court. So how you have to begin to open the dialogue with the court and begin to ask questions, and they have a duty to actually help you. So.
And it seems like they ambush people in situations like what Angela's in. They ambush them with so much that they it's sometimes these little violations that they perpetrated get forgotten. They just get lost in the whole complexity of things. So that's a really good advice, to take and go back, look at all the little things that happened, starting at the first time that they stepped out of line, and going from there, because being getting in their face and holding them accountable is I would think in any situation. When dealing with these, the police, the courts, being vocal and asking a lot of questions, and maybe Angela, if having these, that list of questions and everything, maybe we can, maybe somebody, Jason can point you in a direction of somebody to speak to or speak about this with. But, starting at the beginning, a list of questions, being vocal with the court, and going in there as the plaintiff with that counterclaim against them, not letting them forget that you guys committed gross violations of my rights. You have destroyed my property, or in this case, it was your father's property. You have destroyed property. You have, violated my rights in so many ways. And I'm going to hold you accountable for this. And that's really, I think, the stance, because we had spoke about that a little bit last time, Angela, about people telling you in the beginning, keep it down. You don't want to stir things up. You don't want to make it worse for yourself. But I think that if you don't, they will steamroll you. They will walk all over you, and they will leave you in a situation like I'm thinking that you're in now, where you just feel so overwhelmed, like, where do I turn? I don't know which way to turn. They've hit me from all directions. They're throwing, lies and allegation after allegation at me, and it makes it overwhelming. So hopefully, you've got some, steps that you can take.
Absolutely, and I would be more than happy to question the court. I don't get an opportunity in the courtrooms. I'm not allowed to speak. I've attempted in my trial when things were said that were false. Like I said before, one of the witnesses that was testifying, their evidence didn't match the evidence that the prosecuting attorney was entering in, and the judge won't hear from you. So I guess my confusion is, how do I go about opening up communication with the court? First of all,
an affidavit of truth. An affidavit of truth stands as fact. in a court. So everything, you put all your grievances down. You say everything that has happened that you feel is, a violation of your rights. You enumerate them, outline them, and then you record that as an affidavit of truth, and that's going to stand as a fact of law. I mean, unless they rebut, and then that begins the dialogue. You put that forward. You submit that to the court and say, listen, this is where you guys violated this right, and this is where you violated this right, and this is where you violated. And I mean, be thorough. You have to literally describe for them each incident and each infraction, because each of those infractions can enable you, if you can prove the infractions, enable you to a compensation, it enables you to have some remedy.
Okay. And do I only, the affidavit of truth, do I only take that up on what happened to the courtroom, or can I take that against the FBI, the IRS, prosecuting attorney, and even my own personal defense attorney?
All of them, every one of them. I mean, you can name anyone you want to name. It's your affidavit of truth. All you're doing is you're just it's a legal document that you have sworn and basically pledged that is truthful. It's a truth in law. So basically, and it stands. If they don't rebut that, then that's what happened. They can put forward a dialogue at that point, but basically, that's how you're going to get them to listen to what you're saying. You can't just go into the courtroom and make an argument. You have to actually begin a dialogue on the record. So, and the affidavits are how you begin to open that dialogue up.
Okay. I've attempted to do that. Mr. Snook, that was helping me with the U.S. Observer, he wrote a statement of truth, an affidavit of truth, for me, because he was a third-party objective person that went through and researched the case and basically investigated it to see, I was a homemaker. I didn't participate in my husband's business. Yes, they did ask me to be the authorized signer, but I had no knowledge or interactions with the members, et cetera, and they refused to allow me to enter that into evidence. So do I just mail it in?
Who refused? Who refused, Angela? Who refused?
The judge.
Okay, but you don't file anything with the judge. You file it with the clerk.
Okay.
And the clerk has a list of duties and responsibilities as well, especially, and I could get long-winded here, but especially where the sovereign people are concerned in accessing the courts. The clerk has a duty to allow access. Those courts are our courts. So no matter what the judge says, you have a right to access the court and to file your own documents. It's absolutely crazy that a judge would tell you that you can't file a document.
Well, I've been through this and been told a lot of the things that are happening are crazy. However, I think that where I am located, and I'm not saying that it's more so here because I've heard stories everywhere, but I think more because we are so in a fishbowl that they've just done whatever they've wanted for so long. That's just how it is here. I had my attorney sharing information with the prosecuting attorney against my wishes. It's just nuts.
Yeah, they'll do
it's a good old boy network, huh?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. It's the good old boy network, and they'll pass it to their little buddies, across the aisle, the ones trying to put you away, and it's unbelievable. And I've heard numerous, cases like this. Donna's husband, during his trial, his own lawyer trashed, threw away, disregarded evidence that would have very much helped his case and proven or rebutted the allegations and proved that the allegations put against him were false. So yeah, this is very common coin. It is a good old boy network for sure.
Absolutely. I wasn't allowed to enter in any evidence during my trial. My witnesses were refused, not only by the judge, but by the attorney. When I pitched a fit with the attorney that you will call my witnesses, the judge refused to hear them. There was no evidence entered on my behalf other than a ring that one witness testified was diamond and it was amethyst. That was the only evidence. And I had stacks of it. I had proof that my child was here during the raid and when my husband was arrested with his school records and his hospital records. I had proof that I had blocked one of the witnesses because they were trying to get money from me well long before the investment club. I had notarized statements by witnesses that testified against me saying the polar opposite of what they said on the stand. None of that ever made it into my trial.
Mm. Yeah. Well, it would have helped you.
Oh.
It would have definitely
Absolutely.
helped you.
Did they give you any reason why?
The attorney refused
Was
to
there any
enter
reason
in
given why?
the notarized statement. He told me that for my personal benefit, it was better if I didn't enter it in, like not allowing my husband to testify, which I was a homemaker. I mean, I had nothing to do with this club. At the end of the day, he's the only one that knows what happened and what didn't happen, him and his partner, and they refused to allow him to testify. I had teachers that I wanted to testify on my behalf. I lived up at that school. They refused to allow them. The judge said on the basis that it showed good doings. But they spent my whole trial saying I did all this wrong stuff. I didn't understand why I could have somebody showing that I wasn't around to do the wrong stuff. I was somewhere else.
Right.
But that was the basis. Under you can't enter anything showing defendants good doings.
Oh wow. That just that blows my mind. You can't enter anything that would show good doing. That's so which is more of a reason to be more vocal, because you have just talked about so many things that they are taken for granted. Your lack of knowledge on this and the lack of being more in their face and vocal, and they're going to take an advantage of you. And you just listed off quite a few things that they've done in the courtroom, out of the courtroom, and that probably is your best stance right now. Getting this affidavit of truth, file it with the clerk. It was the clerk, right, Jason?
Right. I would also look into getting an extension, from the court, as far as because you need time to be able to prepare a defense, and you have to be able to sit down and know what your defense is and be able to defend it. You need to be able to go in there and truly understand why you're behaving the way you are, because believe me, they're going to question it. And you can't just do that over the course of a week or 2 weeks. You're going to have to ask at this point. You're going to have to open the dialogue with the court and ask for an extension of time. I'm not sure when your next court date is, or at what stage you're at in some of these offenses. But you have to begin a dialogue and say, hey, we need some time to sort this out. Explain to them, your situation with the attorneys that you've gotten and the approach you've taken. Just talk to them. I mean, I guess at the point that they're going to do what they want to do, they're going to do what they want to do. I mean, if it's really if it's degraded that far, I guess at that point we need to be presenting evidence to a grand jury outside of their jurisdiction to begin investigating what they're doing and how they're enforcing the law, because there are rules that they have to abide by, and if they're not going to allow you your due process, then you have remedy. I mean, there are ways to make public officials behave, I guess is my point.
Okay.
And despite everything that's transpired, we can't get discouraged, because that's just going to be the mother of all failure. Believing that you have no recourse.
I don't believe that I have no recourse. I'm just unsure which direction to go. My next court date is February 13th, and it's sentencing. I've already been put through a sham of a trial. It really was. I was never questioned of my knowledge of my husband's business. They studied my trial, talking about my childhood growing up, my parents' divorce, just things that had nothing to do with why I was there. And I was found guilty. Again, the jury saw more evidence against me than I've ever seen. And now we had the forfeiture hearing. The judge is deciding if my children get to keep their belongings, the clothes on their back, the things they've accumulated through their life, but it's already been decided that, anything and everything my husband and I have ever owned will be taken from us. And now they're going after my father for his 84 acres and his homes and everything he's worked for his whole life, although they convicted me, making him the biggest victim. So it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it can be very overwhelming. I'm sure when you look at the whole picture and everything that they've done. And again, I think it's great advice, and this really goes, even outside of a legal aspect of it, to when things get very overwhelming, to take and make a list, and let's start at the beginning. Let's prioritize things, and let's start working on that list, getting things, questions, getting in touch with resources that could help educate you, as well as your own research and into understanding more about this, because as Jason said, you definitely don't want to go in there with not, with everything not together, because they will pounce on that, like a hungry wolf on a T-bone. I mean, they would just they will eat it up. That you don't know, what's going on, and they will take an advantage of that. And we've already seen, you've already told us of numerous times that they taken advantage of it, thinking that, she's just some dumb housewife. She don't know what's going on. We can really take it to her. She'll be willing to, give in, because, maybe she thinks that we're the ultimate law of the land, and what we say is right and legal and this and that. And that is, by far not the case. So, getting educated on this matter, getting these affidavits of truth, starting at the beginning, listing from the very beginning all of the separate violations, and then addressing the clerk with this affidavit of truth, and being vocal with them and not backing down. I would think would be the course of action to go. Wouldn't you agree, Jason?
No, definitely. Angela, I have kind of a network, a loose network of associates, if you will, that each have a different kind of specialty that they research, and I would be more than happy to try to put you in touch with some of these gentlemen.
Awesome.
In regards to the process and the procedure and how to go about getting your dialogue started.
I would be eternally grateful. I truly would. I do have fight still left in me. Again, it's just, knowing which direction to fight and who to fight at what time, because there's a whole plethora of battles going on at this moment.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it can be so overwhelming. So, I think that this would actually be a good time to bring this to a close, because I think we left on a really good note here. We're ending on a really good note, being that Jason is willing to take and put you in touch with some people that can help you in all different aspects of this, as far as getting things going and addressing these violations and taking it one step at a time. So, Jason, I want to thank you for your time. It sounds like you've been a great help to Angela, and I've learned a lot, because I really didn't know a whole lot about the UCC code. I mean, I had read about it, but of course all of the terminologies, you put it in a very layman's terms to where generally people's going to understand it. Angela, our best wishes, of course, and as you know, we're going to be here to take and help you in any way possible. You have my email, I believe. If not, I will get that to you. And we will all be in touch to keep our eye on this. So, Jason, thank you. Angela, thank you. And for my guest, I'm Kurt, Irritate State Podcast.